Amitendra knows this subject from the practitioner side, from the needs of industry side, and also from how to transmit, oh, sorry, going backward, how to transmit that information to learners. So we talk about AI and ML, and I put together this kind of history of where the concept of thinking machines came from and how we've got to where we are today. So, Amitendra, do you want me to let's go through this together. I'm
Sure.
going to start off with the first item is ancient legends that tell of artificial beings. For example, there's a legend from Europe in the 16th century called the Golem, in which a member of a community built a man from clay and gave it life to defend the community from outside assault. So the idea that you can make a man or make a person and imbue it with intelligence is an old idea. The early 20th century science fiction, talked about what robots are, and the word robot comes from a play that was produced in 1921 about artificial workers, and the idea of artificial people, machines built that were able to think independently, became part of the popular consciousness. So can you tell us about what happened when Alan Turing kind of got a hold of that idea, Turing test? Amitendra, are you there?
Sorry, I lost you in between.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, can you tell us about the Turing test? Turing test, are you there?
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I
Okay.
just lost you.
Okay. So we're on the Turing test. Was Alan Turing proposed that?
So a Turing test was basically the idea was it was supposed to check whether or not a computer is capable of thinking like a human being or not. That's what the whole idea was. And this test is named after Alan Turing, and who is the founder of the Turing test. So this is what he came up with, the idea whether the computers are capable of thinking or not, capable of thinking like a human being or not. So basically abstract thinking that we talk about, problem solving that we talk about. So whether they are capable of that or not, that's what the whole idea of this test was. Okay, so Turing came up with this idea that a computer can be said to possess some artificial intelligence if it can mimic human response under specific conditions. So originally, when he came up with this test, it required 3 terminals, and then each of which was physically separated from the other 2. And one terminal is operated by a computer, while the other 2 was operated by human. And then based on this test, the idea was to understand if computers can actually acknowledge us or probably interact with us or not based on certain responses which human is generating. So that's what the whole idea of Turing test was.
Yeah, and person A is talking to person B and to the computer, but not knowing which one is which, so that the Turing test passes if person A can't tell them apart, basically. And so in 1955, the term artificial intelligence came into being. Very soon after that, machine learning, the idea of machines being able to modify their own behavior or responses based on their exposure to the data out in the world. And so, are you familiar with ELIZA, Tendra?
Eliza was the first chatbot, if I'm not mistaken, right? That
Yeah.
was this. It was idea was to simulate conversation. That came in 1950, 65. Are you saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was sort of an attempt to pass the Turing test because the ELIZA program would respond to you, and it was supposed to mimic the responses of a psychologist. So you would ask it questions or tell it about yourself, and it would give different responses that would guide the conversation. The idea was, is this something that you would recognize as a helpful psychologist? But that was one of the original attempts to do this. By the 1980s, you started moving into the area that you're more familiar with today, which is neural networks, and then ultimately deep learning. How did that develop from the 80s on, artificial neural networks and so forth?
That's pretty interesting story. First of all, John McCarthy came up with the idea of artificial intelligence, or probably the word was coined by him. And the initial idea was in terms of developing the neural networks, which was quite a buzzword in that era. But the problem with neural network that they understood that point in time was that the computing power was not up to the mark so that we can develop high-end neural networks. And this very idea of having machines thinking like human being based on neural network started to lose its traction in late 80s because of the computing issues, or we did not have technology. And by early 90s, people started moving towards more of a machine learning algorithms, which were computationally less exhaustive, and it was producing good results. So this idea came back again of neural network into the picture once we started developing high-end machines, which were capable of not only storing the data, but they were able to actually analyze and probably do a very high-end computing. So that's how it is. It has come, it has been like there since long, but nowadays it has got a lot of traction. It has developed to a different level altogether.
Yeah. So the old concept finally became practical as
Yeah.
as we came to the turn of the century. And so skipping ahead, now we have something that has captured popular attention everywhere around the world, in business and in people just in general, is the idea of the GPT and Chat GPT, and having that incorporated into our familiar tools on the internet. So we're at a point now where that level of intelligence is becoming kind of commonplace, or part of the environment around us. Yes. So let's move on and talk about what the importance of AI and machine learning is. So AI and machine learning extend human capabilities. People popularly say, well, is AI going to replace me at work, or is it going to do my job? And the notion is that throughout history, people have turned to technology to extend their capabilities. The history of agriculture, for example, went from people poking holes in the ground with a stick in order to plant a seed, to using that stick to dig furrows, to attaching the stick to a harness and dragging it, to domesticating animals to pull that plow, putting a metal plowshare on it, to creating machine power to pull the plow, to developing automated systems. And now if you take a look at what happens in a high-end modern farm, have a farmer inside of a tractor that has half a dozen computer screens to monitor the position of the tractor, the type of terrain it's on, the crop that's being either planted or harvested, all these types of things, weather forecast, everything is available in that cockpit of that tractor to that farmer. And this allows one person to grow the amount of crops that would have taken 30, 40, 100 people in previous eras. So this is to say that technology extends the ability of people to do things. AI machine learning are not really different in that respect. Is that kind of your perspective on it as well?
Sorry, Stuart, lost you again. What did you
Okay.
say?
I was going to say, is it also your perspective that AI and machine learning extend human capabilities?
A lot of development has happened. If you talk about in particular, you were mentioning GPT-3, based on which Chat GPT has come up, and it is able to create human-like text. It is able to talk to you in a manner any other person talk to each other, like it can communicate with you. So when you're talking about AI and machine learning in general, it is exhibiting some kind of intelligence at the moment, and over the period of time in next few years, we will have more generic intelligence imparted into machines. That's what we are looking, artificial generic intelligence. So a lot of work has happened and at the artificial narrow intelligence level, where we have been trying to make a machine learn certain tasks, but one task at a time. But a lot of work is going on in terms of making a machine in a way how a human behaves or interacts with certain environment. Machine should also be able to do that, and that's where the work is going on. So going forward, you will have machines which will be expert at different tasks. They'll be kind of superhuman and will be able to perform a variety of tasks with ease and with high efficiency. That's how it will go.
Yeah. And the purpose of that is as a force multiplier, as they say, to let a person do more work. If you think about how in offices an executive might have a human assistant, if the ability of the technology allows the executive to turn to the technology and have that same type of assistance, they can, number one, multiply it because of the ability to have more than one system helping them. And number two, that makes their capability greater, the opportunities for the company greater, the opportunities for people to move up from jobs as assistants greater. So this is why AI and ML is transforming the world around us. And this is a taxonomy here of how the different layers build up to create machine learning and on top of that artificial intelligence. So can you take us a little bit through this, Amitendra?
Sure. So if you look at this, the core of it, we're talking about certain technology. Now, technology here mentioned in general, if you think this way, there'll be two aspects of it from where technology is coming, or probably three. One would be storing a huge amount of training data that we call it, so that the machines can learn from it. So that's the storage part. The second part would be that you need to have some systems which can analyze that large chunk of data, or probably you have some platform which will help you in terms of analyzing that large chunk of data. And third would be platforms which will support this entire end-to-end deployment. So that's how technology will come into the picture when we're talking about machine learning or AI in general. So storing the data, then analyzing it, and then come up with the whole platform or application which will do end-to-end work for you. And the next part we are talking about is different methods which will be applied so that machines can learn. It could be very simple statistical concepts. It could be little complex mathematical optimization algorithms which will be applied, and that's where your regression, decision tree, all this come into the picture. So this is just to tell you that there are certain concepts which will talk about how machines can learn. And I'm going from core to the outer layer, and then we talk about machine learning in general, which is different types of learning is there. You have supervised learning, you have unsupervised, reinforcement learning, and then combining all this ecosystem, a bigger universe is getting built, which is artificial intelligence, where we talk about not only machine learning, But certain areas which is outside the scope of machine learning, it could be, say, a language translation we are talking about, or a voice recognition, or probably self-driving cars that you talk about. So all these are little beyond the scope of traditional machine learning algorithms, and that's where your artificial intelligence is coming into the picture. So you have humanoids which can interact with people. They can understand what has been spoken, what has been told to them. They can get your tasks done. Similarly, you might have some, like, if you talk about natural language processing kind of language models that we have in place nowadays, it has developed to a different level altogether. You can translate from one language to another with so much of ease. And these are large language models we are talking about. We call them LLMs.
Hmm.
So all this is the entire ecosystem of artificial intelligence, where you have technology, you have certain techniques which are supposed to train the machines, and then you have certain application areas, which is mentioned over here, voice recognition or NLP or computer vision, which is getting developed with a rapid pace.
I just as a sidelight, I heard an expert interviewed on the radio, a professor who studies languages. And her argument was that artificial intelligence is going to lead to the reduction of the number of human languages down to maybe 20 large languages that have a lot of use and interaction behind them. And I that struck me as completely the opposite of what I expect to happen, which is because artificial intelligence will enable machines to speak obscure languages, things that are now only spoken by a handful of people or used by a handful of people, you'll be able to interact with an artificial speaker of the language much more readily than trying to find somebody human who speaks the language. And so it'll be possible to seek out and engage with the smaller languages of the world much more easily. Her argument was that there won't be enough data to train systems, and therefore only large languages will survive. But I think the mistake she was making is that relative to a small language, for example, the Hawaiian language of the Hawaiian Islands in the United States, um, you can have the entire scope of the language used as the training for your system. So it's not a matter of, yes, there are more words in English, so it will survive. It's you can put the entire Hawaiian language into the training database and create a very good simulation of that. So it's really a matter of relative size of the database relative to the available data. So um, do I have that right, or is she right?
No, what you're saying is correct. In fact, what if I recall it correctly, a few months back, Mark Zuckerberg mentioned that they are able to translate a very niche language, I would say, which was spoken by only a million of people, probably maximum a million.
Hmm.
And they were able to successfully translate from their native to English language with a very small set of data. So kind of algorithms we have in place, you talk about generative algorithms, you talk about the work which is happening. I don't think so that way it will go the way you mentioned that one of the lady has told you, has been talking about that. What I think would become like this, like I had to learn English probably because I had to interact with everyone across the globe. So I had to learn. But if that barrier is gone, then probably I don't have to learn new languages. I'm happy with my own language, and I can use some of the AI tool to interact with anyone in a real time. So probably language will retain as it is, and ease of communicating will increase. So with that logic, what I'm thinking is that languages will survive. It will not happen that only 20 or 25 would be there. That's what I'm thinking.
Yep. And this is another thing from science fiction that will become, I think, reality, where we have the concept of universal translators that people in science fiction television shows can use to talk to aliens. Well, we'll be able to use that to talk with each other, each speaking and understanding in their native language, but with the machine acting as the intermediary. So this is just a single statistic here, but this shows that the market for AI services, development, things around that will exceed $1.5 trillion by the end of the decade. So this is a very fast growing field. I think 1.5 trillion exceeds the size of the cloud computing market, data science market. So this is a very large and fast growing field. And then we have some quotes here. I think go through some of these, but the point that the president of IBM is making is the one that I tried to make earlier, which is artificial intelligence is a way to augment human intelligence and enhance us. So is that also your view, Amitendra?
Which one you're saying?
The first quote here?
Some people call it this artificial intelligence, but the reality is this technology will enhance us. So instead, I always look at artificial intelligence from that perspective. Like, think about this way, that when computers were introduced, people started talking about that the jobs will be gone, but look where we have come to. We have adopted to computers, and we have used to our own advantage to actually create more avenues. So I would say that human beings are more intelligent, and they will adopt to these technologies, and something new will come up, which will be creating more avenues for us.
Yep. Alan Kay's quote is philosophical, but very pointed, which is that some people worry that the machines are going to outsmart us and be better than us. But if you look at anything in nature, the way that it created and the way it fits its function in nature ought to give you a sense that we are not necessarily the most important or superior form of life on the planet, and we have a place in the ecosystem. So we shouldn't feel that machines that can outperform us in certain ways necessarily make us less human. So that's an interesting take on that quote. Do you agree with the next one from Sergey Brin of Google about the information attached to your brain?
So if you had all the world's information directly attached to your brain, or an artificial brain that was smarter than your brain, you would be better off. Kind of, yes. I would say yes. All the world's information directly attached to, or an artificial brain that was smarter than your brain, probably I'll prefer that.
Yeah. I mean, we have a little bit of that when we take out our smartphones and can access, search engines. But I know that Elon Musk wants to do the direct attach function and actually implant an interface into our brains. I'm not sure about whether I'm ready for that, but
probably that will be too much for us. Probably generation wouldn't mind.
Yes. And then Colin Engel, who is the head of iRobot that makes automated appliances for the home, I think he sums it up very well by saying it's going to be interesting to see how we deal with artificial intelligence, and it will definitely be cool. So take the attitude that the world that we're going to live in will be different, certainly. Fascinating to see what those differences are, but if you keep your mind open, it should be a pretty exciting place to live.
Yeah, that's correct, actually. And I just want to tell one thing, that anything new which comes up will have its pros and cons. When the cars were introduced, the newspaper heading was that now the roads would be more cleaner because there will be no horse dongs on the roads. And see where we have come to. Now the cars are the main source of all the issues that we have on the road. But having said that, it doesn't mean I don't want a car, right? So everything has its pros and cons, and we have to adopt to it, whether you like it or not, it's going to happen.
Yep. And there's always the opportunities in the process of solving the problems that new technologies create to make the new technologies more valuable. I think one quote from a previous webinar I did said, the next big thing is going to be the thing that makes the last big thing actually work. So,
Yeah.
you talk about careers in AI, and first you need a base of skills. And you talk about the T-shaped skill set. It's a common concept in human resources, which is you have a broad set of skills. That's the horizontal bar of the T. And then you pick one of those skill areas or a couple of those skill areas to dig down into and develop deep knowledge and expertise in. And that's the vertical bar of the T. And so here are the skills in AI and ML that create that broad horizontal bar. Can you go through some of these, Amitendra?
Sure. So basically, the skill set when you're talking about, I would tell you that you can divide it into two sections. One side you will have the technology part, and that's where your Python come into the picture, or probably Keras TensorFlow, which has been mentioned on your screen. And on the other side would be the technique aspect of it, in a sense that there are certain statistical analysis, or there are certain optimization algorithm which comes from vector algebra or calculus, which you need to understand how it works. And then machine learning is basically a blend of these two things together. In a sense, you need to know the technology which can help you in terms of applying these concepts onto the data and learn from it. And obviously, you need to understand how the concepts work so that you can apply the appropriate concept on a given data. Think of it this way, that we know how the multiplication works. But if we have a tedious multiplication to be done, we start our calculator. So calculator is our helping hand. In the same fashion, the technology aspect which is mentioned is our helping hand, which will help us in terms of doing the tedious computation on the data. And those calculations are basically our analysis that we are supposed to learn. So if you talk about, say, statistics, which is the basics that you start with, you need to understand certain areas of stats which will help you in terms of understanding the data and probably the kind of analysis you want to do. Then, as I mentioned, you have to learn a helping hand so that you can apply these concepts readily on the data. That's where Python comes into the picture. And then once you start getting into it, you have different concepts that you need to understand. So you start at machine learning level, and then you go to the deep learning level, which will consist of your neural networks, your generative adversarial networks, your recommendation systems, probably NLP. Then you have a different kind of learning, which is reinforcement learning. So as I mentioned, if you keep it simple, that I have to learn a certain techniques, and we have to understand the technology, go with that particular understanding, start from basic statistics, move towards machine learning, then deep learning, and so on. That's how the career, the path should be there. And that's the kind of skills that you are required to have.
Thank you. And then this opens up the opportunities. The opportunities then let you move into different roles. And we have really starting from the bottom to the top, going from the lower left side, or from the lower middle side, I should say, the ML engineer and ML developers are a basic level, and you can move up into the architecture of the systems. But you can also apply these skills in AI, or as you go further into deep learning and data science, data engineering, to be technical aspects of how to um, ingest and condition and process the data itself so the systems can operate. So is there a path that you would see through these roles, or are they the kinds of things where you can choose one and move in that direction from the beginning?
Um, uh, just like any development project, there are certain roles which have been defined and you can directly apply for it. Certain roles are there which you have to grow into. Like when we talk about, say, AI architect or ML architect. So basically the idea is to design your entire machine learning products or applications that you are building. And for that, you have to understand application design, your ML ops, there are different platforms, different technology which support that. Then you start the entire architecture of a particular project. You mentioned that this is how the data will move. But then inside that architecture, there will be different components, and each component will require different kind of skill set. So you'll have ML developer, you'll have ML engineers. So that's how it goes. But basically, you can start with a ML, probably ML engineer or a data engineer, I would say. That's where you start working on the data. And then you move into building the models, then probably designing it, and then eventually you become a data scientist, where you are capable of not only understanding the business aspects of analysis, but also the technology part. And then you understand how it gets developed, how it gets deployed, what kind of monitoring is required. So it depends on your interest also, but generally it starts at a data analyst level, probably if you're really fresher, and then generally move into probably you can choose data engineer or machine learning engineer. You want to go to the data side or you want to go to the machine learning side, and then these machine learning roles which are mentioned will evolve into a more broad level role of AI architect or AI developer or AI engineer that we are talking about.
Yep. Thank you. You're going, as Amitendra characterized them, they're helping hands, the different technologies and tools and platforms that you'd be exposed to. And here are some of the common ones that would give you a good foundation or grounding in the tools you need to have to do work in data science and machine learning and artificial intelligence. So these all have different purposes. Can you run us through some of the different reasons or purposes of these different tools, what they're used for?
Sure. So Python basically is the underlying structure over here, underlying platform over here. And once you start working with a particular project, probably you are required to understand the data, and probably you want to see some trends in it. So that's where matplotlib come into the picture. Now, matplotlib is a Python library. So we use this library to plot data and understand how it's working out, how the trends are, how the patterns are. Then similarly, if you want to do a natural language processing, where you want to do a sentiment analysis probably, or you want to do information extraction, so you can use a library called NLTK. This is part of your Python itself, natural language toolkit. Pretty good library when you want to do information extraction based on certain text inputs. Django helps you with any kind of UI application you want to build. So any front end you are thinking to build, so you don't have to probably go to Java or .NET or probably HTML. You can use Django itself. So you can create those applications in Python itself. Flask is basically for the purpose of machine learning deployments that we do. But now we have more libraries, more platforms which support this particular aspect of machine learning, the deployment part. Similarly, OpenCV is an excellent library for computer vision, where you work with the images and videos. And this has really some of the really cool applications you will find out. Like other day, I was sitting and I was talking to one of my friend that, we can color black and white images with an algorithm. Old images we can pick up and we can process in some 10-15 seconds, and it will get colored automatically. We don't even get to decide the color. Algorithm decides. That's part of your OpenCV. And I did that experiment sitting with my friend. It was such an interesting project. I picked up all my old images of my grandfather, great-grandfather, scanned it, and then processed through this algorithm. In 10-15 seconds, it became colored entirely, which you might have seen on Instagram and all. So that's part of your OpenCV. Similarly, you have Keras, TensorFlow for your deep learning applications. You have sklearn for your machine learning project. So there are different tools which are available for different purposes, and it's these are the things that you will be taught also in the classroom, and this is something you should know.
Thank you. So one of the great reasons to be in this field is that the compound growth and demand for the skills still at around 70% annual growth in demand for new workers in the field. There's currently just the open jobs that are listed on LinkedIn, 13,800 machine learning jobs and 7,800 AI jobs in the country of India alone. So the number of openings is always high, and we see it continuing to grow because this is the field where companies need to evolve to, and they understand they need this capability. They need people who are competent practitioners in the field. So this is a great and growing job area. This I took off of Glassdoor. These are some of the companies that are hiring, and this is again Glassdoor India. You can Amitendra, how does this list strike you? This is just again a sampling of who's out there right now looking for people. But
First of all, I would say that these are some of the companies, as Stuart mentioned. There like you talk about in today's era, even a startup is having a dedicated team which focuses on data, even if you have smaller set of data. So think from that perspective, every company that is there in place or every process which is happening is backed by data. So all these companies which are there since ages, they obviously will have some requirement on data science or machine learning. And in addition to these, any new company also which is coming, they focus big time on the data now. So there's a huge scope of people with the skill set with machine learning or any such technologies that we talked about.
just to let you know, Zoom is giving me an error message on my side, so I may drop off and jump back on in a second, but we'll see what happens.
Sure.
But yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, these are examples, and again, I picked large companies, but as Amitendra pointed out, all different sizes. These are a couple of the areas where, and looking at Glassdoor, it doesn't necessarily distinguish in salary ranges between AI and ML, but these are some of the kinds of ranges that you can find. And you can see how as you improve your skills, if you move up within the category of AI ML engineer, you have a lot of upward growth range for your salary potential. But if you undergo additional training, additional upskilling and education, and move into a higher category of job, you move into a much higher range of salary potential. So this is a really high-end open field for people in terms of their potential earnings. With that, I'm going to go ahead and we'll go to the questions and answers. And I'm going to look in both the chat and the Q&A. So let's start with the Q&A, and then I'll go back over to the chat. And so one person asked whether AI, Chat GPT, or any of those other technologies emerging are dangerous for people who work in software development, meaning are they going to take the jobs?
Some of the jobs will be automated, and it's not about even Chat GPT and all. There is some kind of automation which is going on since ages now, and that takes care of certain aspect of the jobs, but some other jobs are also created. So I always say this, that probably these tools will not take the job, but a person who understands these tools or they can work with the tools probably will take your job, not these tools in general. And if some of the tasks are getting automated, then there are other opportunities which are getting created. So that's how it is.
Mm-hmm. And somebody observes that yes, tools have always extended human capability in the past. Is there a qualitative difference here with the tools that are coming out through AI and ML are going to be able to think and therefore do the jobs that human beings can do? Seems to be a theme in some of these questions, but is it qualitatively different from past eras where machines extended human capability?
Well, it is little advanced if you compare with that. And some of the jobs, if you talk about, say, if self-driving cars become really, really accurate, then yes, a lot of like driving will become an extent very rare skill in some years, right? 40, 50 years probably down the line, driving will become a very rare skills. But as I keep mentioning that if there is a self-driving car, then you need bunch of people who can analyze that data continuously to make it better and better. That does not happen automatically because a lot of hand holding is still required. There is a human and machine what kind of blend which is happening and which is creating these applications. So as I said earlier also that it is really different from what has happened in the past, but as I mentioned, it will take care of some of the jobs, but it will create a lot of other opportunities as well.
Okay. And let me scroll down.